Hello, welcome to this lesson video on construction contract documents. So in this lesson, we'll learn about identifying the contract documents that define the agreement between the owner and the general contractor, and identify also the templates, the industry template contracts that are available for owners and contractors to use in their contracts. And then we'll learn about some of these templates, the AIA A101 and 201 for the standard form of agreement and the general conditions. So in the previous lessons, we learned about bidding, the bidding process and negotiation after awarding the contract. So once the bid is over and they now finalizing the contract, executing the contract, that means that they are approving the contract documents that form this contract. So there's the form of agreement, the contract conditions, and then specification and drawings. Typically, specs and drawings are the ones that already shared in the bid. They just carry over during to the contract, but then you have to also kind of negotiate some parts of the form of agreement or general conditions, and these also were shared in the bid, so the contractor will know the requirements of the project when they price the bid. So in this lesson, we'll learn about form of agreement and general conditions, and we'll learn about these through a specific template that is prepared and published by one of the industry organizations, which is AIA. AIA is American Institute of Architects, so they are one of the first entities that prepared such templates, and they almost became like a standard for people to follow. But then afterwards, other organizations came, like Consensus Doc, which is mostly kind of supported by contractors, and that kind of they came as a countering the AIA influence in the contracts and trying to increase the authority of architects. Now Consensus Docs kind of try to balance things by giving some, what they say, fair authority to the contractor and limiting the authorities that given to the architects by AIA. But then there is a balanced kind of entity here, which is the Engineers Joint Contract Documents Committee, EJCDC. So it's kind of a bunch of entities from the construction and engineering design sides of the project. So kind of they can provide a good balance between giving authorities to architects and contractors. For international projects, so there is the FIDIC organization that publishes projects for international projects that publish contracts for international projects. So if you're involved in an international construction company or engineering company that does projects overseas and has entities coming from different national backgrounds, then FIDIC would be a good template or contract to use. So in this course, we'll focus on AIA. And again, as a reminder, we're dealing here with design, bid, build, delivery, and kind of the contracting methods related to that. So the AIA, the first form here is A101, so it's the form of agreement, so it's kind of a summarized version of the contract general conditions. So kind of they summarize things in fewer pages than the AIA A201. So the A101 is a shorter, kind of concise contract version, or version of the contract. So I published both documents, A101 and A201, so you can see this is the outline of the documents, and when we meet in class, we'll kind of do some game here. So we'll try to find this information here. What is the payment scheme used in this contract? What are the possible ways of defining the start date, and other questions here. So I'm showing it for you here. So you kind of prepare. When we meet in class, we'll start trying to find the information for these questions. So the second part of the contract documents is general conditions, and they call general conditions because they are conditions that are typically applied in any kind of or most of the construction projects. So by the industry over years kind of figured out that people would accept generally these conditions on both the contractor side and the owner side. So that's why it's called general conditions. But in some projects, you need to supplement these general conditions with special conditions that are not in the general conditions. So that can be anything. Like imagine any special requirement from the owner to the contractor to consider. So special requirements for site facilities or labor requirements or health and safety requirements. So these will be in the supplemental conditions. The general conditions document, AIA 8201, this is the kind of the outline or the articles. And when we meet also, we'll kind of go over what the first 6 articles cover, and the other articles will be covered in the different lessons of this course. So things like payments and change orders will cover separately, disputes will cover separately. So we will eventually cover most of the general conditions, discuss the reason behind and justification behind the specific terms and requirements. And we'll do also an exercise in class when we meet. So we'll discuss, we'll try to find information. So that's you as a project manager or project engineer, before you commit to a request from the owner or the architect, you have to go back to the contract and be familiar with what the contract calls. Or before even that, before you decide on bid or no bid kind of decision, you need to know what the contracts call for or requires you to do. So, for example, what's the difference between the work and project? You think it's just wording, but it's important to know what's work and what's the project, and that will be in Article 1.1.3 or 1.1.1. So, work is the scope that's covered by this specific contract. But the project is the total construction, which the work is part of it. So you can be part of a project that other GCs are involved in it. So that's the project, but your own work is covered by your own contract. That's a different thing. What does plain meaning rule appear in the document? And that has a big legal implication because it's mentioned in Article 1, 2, 3 here, because it tells you that I don't have to define every term in the contract because I'm using here the plain meaning of the technical terms that the industry is accustomed to understand. So that's another kind of word that has a major implication, and there are a lot of legal cases that kind of were based on plain meaning rule. Who maintains the ownership and copyright of drawings and specifications? So that's a good question also. Like me as the owner, I have these plans of this project. Can I just copy it and use it in another project? And that's not the case. The architect and the engineers who develop these specs and drawings are the copyright owners of these documents. So yes, you are the owner of the project. You include these in your contract with the contractor, but you don't own these documents. And the same applies, of course, to the general contractor. So that's the end of this lesson, kind of briefly introducing construction contract documents. We'll discuss these more when we meet in person. Until then, take care of yourself and those around you.